On a relatively warm, sunny weekend morning, I, as usual, brewed my wife, Mary's favorite coffee. Just as I was immersed in the news from the newspaper, Mary's calm yet icy words shattered the tranquility. "George, let's get a divorce." I slowly set down the newspaper and looked at the woman I had been in love with for 7 years and married for 5. In that moment, I deeply realized that the deepest pain often hides in the most ordinary moments. I responded in the same unruffled tone. "All right, is it for that guy named Tom?" The coffee cup in her hand trembled slightly, as if disturbed by this simple question about a divorce. She emphasized again, and the faint aroma of coffee now felt like a sharp needle piercing the originally warm weekend atmosphere. My hand, holding the cup, paused for a moment. The scalding liquid splashed onto my hand, but strangely, I felt no pain at all. The numbness within me seemed to have passed the physical sensation. This is our home in New York. The 1,823 mornings we have spent together. Usually, at this time, she would still be asleep, and I would carefully prepare everything just to see the satisfied smile on her face when she wakes up. "Why?" I heard myself ask calmly. Even though I had already sensed some clues over the past 3 months, I still wanted to hear her say the reason. Mary lowered her head, her long fingers continuously rubbing the edge of the coffee cup, a habitual action when she was nervous. Today, she had deliberately applied exquisite makeup, skillfully concealing the dark circles from her early morning wake-up. The cherry-colored lipstick made her appear even more radiant and charming, a typical look she wore every time she met Tom. "We no longer have love," she said softly, her gaze drifting to the window as the October sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling glass, casting a gentle light and shadow on her face. But this light and shadow could not warm my cold heart at this moment. I quietly got up and walked to the study. In the bottom drawer of the desk, there was a stack of printed chat records and photos documenting her moments with Tom over the past 3 months. The afternoon at the seaside, at dusk, the bar late at night. In every photo, she smiled radiantly, as if she were on a cloud of happiness. Yet that cloud seemed to drift further away from me. Originally, these were powerful bargaining chips I intended to use when negotiating with her, but now it seemed there was no longer any need to use them. Is it because of Tom? I returned to the living room with the documents in hand. The sunlight was still warm, but it felt incredibly glaring, as if mocking my failure. Mary's body stiffened noticeably, then she quickly raised her head, a flicker of panic flashing in her eyes, but it was soon replaced by anger. "You investigated me." I gently placed the materials on the coffee table. No need for an investigation. Every place you two have gone on dates is somewhere we once shared beautiful memories. It's just that now the lead has changed to him, and everything has lost its flavor. She quickly flipped through the photos, her fingers trembling slightly. I knew she was eagerly searching for those intimate moments, but she would soon realize that what I showed her were just the most ordinary dating scenes. The real bombshell was still in my heart. "I am sorry," her voice trailed off. "I didn't expect things to turn out like this." "Tom, there's no need to explain," I interrupted her. "You chose me back then, and now you regret it and want to make a different choice. That's perfectly normal. I understand you. Are you really this calm?" Mary looked up, her eyes filled with disbelief. "I thought you would be hysterical or make a desperate plea." I walked to the window, watching the crowd of morning joggers on the street below, full of energy, a stark contrast to my gloomy state of mind at that moment. What difference would that make? The sound of her hurried breathing came from behind me. Perhaps she was looking forward to seeing my pain, or maybe she needed my anger to alleviate her own guilt. But I would not give her what she wanted. "I will have the lawyer draft the divorce agreement. The house will be left to you, and I will take the car." I maintained a calm tone. "Do you have any other requests?" "George," her voice was somewhat choked, "aren't you at all sad?" The sunlight filtered through the glass, casting beams of light and shadow on the floor. 5 years ago, during this season, we were also under such sunlight, filled with hope as we planned for the future. She once said she wanted to count every speck of dust in the morning light with me. But those beautiful vows have now become as fragile as bubbles. "Let's go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow." I turned around and looked at the woman I once loved deeply. "Well, I still remember how much I love you, .. She suddenly stood up, her high heels making a crisp sound on the floor. I thought she would say something more, but she just grabbed her bag and quickly walked toward the entrance. The sound of her leather shoes striking the ground was like a countdown of fate, each echo striking at my heart. Bang. The door was slammed shut, and the scent of her perfume lingered in the air, making me feel suffocated. I sat quietly on the sofa for a long time until the vibration of my phone pulled me back to reality. It was a message from Tom. "I'm sorry, but I must follow my heart." Looking at this message, I suddenly laughed. Follow my heart. What a grandiose reason. Yet little did he know that behind it, my heart was shattering. The sun is still warm, but my world has lost its warmth. From that moment on, I stood up and began to pack away the memories that belonged to us. Those photos, letters, the pictures of the two of us, and the engagement ring hidden in the dark compartment of the TV cabinet. That ring was meant for me to propose to her again on our wedding anniversary next week. I had wanted to tell her that my love for her had never diminished in these 5 years, but now everything has turned to dust. Phone and sent a message to my mother. Mom, Mary and I are getting a divorce. The phone vibrated quickly. I knew my mother must be very worried, but at that moment, I didn't even have the strength to comfort her. The sunlight outside the window gradually changed its angle, casting long shadows in the living room. I stood by the window, gazing at the home we had carefully decorated together, and suddenly realized that love can sometimes vanish without a trace, just like the faint aroma of coffee in the air at this moment, which will eventually dissipate in the endless morning light. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I stood on the balcony lighting a cigarette. The city's neon lights flickered in the distance like countless restless souls sharing their stories. My phone screen lit up with a message from my mother. Son, do you want to come home for a few days? I didn't reply. Life must go on, and I needed to learn to get used to this suddenly empty space beside me. Turning back to the bedroom, Mary's bed was so neatly made that there wasn't a single wrinkle. This month, she had stayed out all night, multiple times. In the past, when she worked late, I would thoughtfully bring her late-night snacks. Now that she doesn't come home, I don't even have the right to ask about it. This change is disheartening. The first encounter 7 years ago feels like it was just yesterday. It was the beginning of the school year in our senior year of college when Mary rushed into the computer lab, clutching a stack of books like a whirlwind that swept into my life. Senior, help me. Her long hair was slightly disheveled. I need to do programming for my graduation project, but I know nothing about it. At that time, her eyes sparkled with a light that seemed to illuminate the entire world. But now that light has quietly extinguished, leaving only a shadow behind. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I got up on time, habitually brewed 2 cups of coffee, and watched one of the cups gradually cool, but I could no longer wait for that familiar figure to come and taste it. At 7 o'clock, I changed my clothes and prepared to go out while the other breakfast on the table remained untouched. Just like our marriage seemingly whole, yet quietly fractured. This is the 3rd day after the divorce agreement was proposed. Mary came back once to pack some clothes. The timing she chose was quite clever, just as I was in a meeting, and we thus tacitly avoided each other like 2 strangers passing by in the dark. The company work continues. The world of code is simple and pure. It does not betray or deceive. In contrast, the human heart is complex and elusive. Mr. George, please take a look at this project proposal. The voice of my assistant Justin interrupted my thoughts. I took the document, but Mary's figure kept appearing on the page, impossible to shake off. 7 years of time, 5 years of marriage. I once thought I knew her inside and out, but now I realize that I have never truly understood her heart. At lunchtime, I went to the restaurant downstairs, as usual. The owner's wife habitually prepared the servings. Mr. George, is your wife not coming today? Well, she's been very busy lately. I uttered this excuse, which I found to be pale and powerless even to myself. The restaurant is right across from her company, a place that used to be our most frequent dating spot, and now just separated by a road. It feels like a world apart. Through the glass window, I saw her and Tom walk into the French restaurant across the street. She was wearing the red dress we bought on our wedding anniversary, her smile radiant like a blooming rose, but the thorns of that rose pierced deeply into my heart. Your beef noodles. The boss's wife's voice pulled me back to reality. Do you want it spicy? I don't know when it started, but our lives have become increasingly bland, just like this bowl of noodles. Perhaps I was too focused on work and neglected her feelings. Perhaps I got used to giving unilaterally and forgot that love requires mutual effort. A message popped up on the computer screen sent by Mary. They'll come by at 6 o'clock to pick up the things. You don't need to come back. What a considerate arrangement. I replied with a brief okay with a resigned smile. Such short, indifferent, and polite conversations have become increasingly common lately, as if we have turned into the most familiar strangers. At 9 o'clock in the evening, I returned home. The living room light was on, and the air was filled with the scent of her usual perfume. There was an additional note on the coffee table. I've taken most of my things. If there's anything left, we can discuss it later. I stood in front of her wardrobe, which is now empty. The place that once hung full of her clothes now only has lonely hangers left. This house, once filled with her laughter and joy, is now left with suffocating silence. The furniture we chose together, the carefully arranged decorations, all silently remind me of the warmth and happiness that once was. And now, all of this has become the past. The photo frame on the bedside table is still there, containing our wedding picture. She is wearing a pure white wedding dress, her face radiating a happy smile. At that time, we firmly believed that love could conquer all. Looking back now, how naive and childish we were. I picked up the frame, my fingertips gently tracing her face in the photo. She leans on my shoulder as if that was her lifelong support, but reality is so cruel. The phone vibrated again. This time, it was Tom. I heard you agreed to the divorce. Thank you for letting go, or thank you for my cowardice. I stared at the message, suddenly wanting to laugh, but in the end, I said nothing. just silently turned off my phone, temporarily putting all these worries out of my mind. As the night deepens, I sit on the balcony watching the lights of the city. One by one, the windows across the way go dark, leaving only a few scattered glimmers of light, like the flickering flame of hope in my heart. Once upon a time, this view was our favorite date spot where we shared our dreams and secrets with each other. You see, she always said excitedly, every light is a story. Yes, every light is a story. But our story is about to quietly come to an end. In this sea of lights, I extinguish the red in my hand, allowing the night to completely engulf me. Immersing myself in this endless darkness, tomorrow, I will go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to submit my divorce application. At this moment, I just want to savor for the last time those memories that are about to fade away on this balcony that belongs to us. Even though they are filled with pain and helplessness, the numbers in the elevator flickered steadily, taking 40 seconds to go from the first floor to the 20th floor. This time was usually enough for me to adjust my state and prepare to welcome a new day. But today, those 40 seconds felt particularly long, because Mary was standing diagonally in front of me, and beside her was the impeccably dressed Tom. The air seemed to freeze in that 20 square meter enclosed space, leaving only the faint vibrations of the elevator's movement. I stared intently at the flickering numbers, pretending not to notice her subtle gesture of linking her arm with Tom's, but inside, I felt a tumultuous wave of discomfort. Ding, the 18th floor has arrived. This is the floor where Mary's company is located. Mary, I'll pick you up tonight. Tom's gentle voice echoed in the elevator, his tone reminiscent of how I spoke 7 years ago when we first met, filled with care and anticipation. I looked at my reflection in the elevator mirror, dressed sharply in a suit with a calm expression, but my heart was bleeding. This scene has played out 3 times in the past week, and each time I felt like a qualified audience member silently watching this cruel performance, unable to change the course of the story. To 8th floor, my floor. As I stepped out of the elevator, Tom called out to me, George, can we talk? I stopped in my tracks and turned to look at this old friend. His gaze carried a sense of apology, yet it subtly revealed a hint of pity, which made me feel extremely disgusted. There's nothing to talk about, I said calmly. Take good care of her. In the conference room, I mechanically flipped through the project report. Every word and sentence was familiar, yet I just couldn't absorb it. Tom's voice kept echoing in my ears. Mary, I'll pick you up tonight. Mr. George. Justin's voice came through. Miss Mary's company has sent a request for changes to the collaboration project. I took the document, and there was Mary's signature prominently displayed on it. The handwriting was elegant, yet carried a hint of deliberate estrangement. This project was something we had worked hard for together, and now she was asking to change the point of contact, which undoubtedly felt like a harsh kick on the already shattered remnants of our relationship. Let's go through the process. I signed my name on the document, and the pen tip accidentally tore the paper, just like my heart is breaking at this moment. During my lunch break, I habitually opened my phone. In the pinned conversation, the last message had been there for a week. Working late tonight. Don't wait for me. At that time, I had no idea that the overtime hidden behind those words concealed betrayal. Looking back now, her final tenderness was merely to make this betrayal seem less abrupt. It's truly laughable. George. His mother's voice came through on the phone. Come home for dinner tonight. I made your favorite rib soup. Okay, I replied very decisively. Compared to that empty home, my mother's concern made me feel a sense of warmth and stability, as if it were a bright light in the darkness. At 6 o'clock in the evening, I packed my things and prepared to leave work. Through the office glass, I could see Mary across the building, also tidying her desk. A familiar figure walked into her office. It was Tom. They chatted and laughed as they entered the elevator, and by chance, they looked up and met my gaze. Mary clearly froze for a moment, then quickly lowered her head as if trying to avoid something. But how long could she avoid it? I turned off the lights in the office and walked alone towards the elevator. The man in the mirror looked exhausted yet still tried to maintain his composure. For the past week, I've been struggling every day to learn how to lose with dignity despite the immense pain inside. My mother's home is still as warm as ever. She, as usual, chattered away while serving me food. Eat more ribs. You've lost weight recently, Mom. I suddenly spoke up. If I hadn't chosen to forgive her for her first betrayal back then, wouldn't we be in a different situation now? The mother's hand paused for a moment. 5 years ago, before we got married, Mary had also wavered because of Tom's return. At that time, I chose to be tolerant and understanding, thinking she would change her mind, but I never expected it would ultimately come to this. Son, the mother said softly, in matters of the heart, there is no right or wrong. You've already done your best. I lowered my head and took a sip of the soup. The salty flavor spread on my tongue, but today, I couldn't taste anything at all. The bitterness in my heart had long overshadowed everything. At 9 o'clock in the evening, I returned home. Habitually, I turned on the television and tuned in to her favorite channel. The news was reporting on the story of a couple celebrating their golden wedding anniversary, a kind of mutual support and lifelong companionship that was once our shared expectation but now has become a luxury. The phone vibrated, and it was a message from Mary. They'll come to collect the things from the house this weekend. I stared at this message for a long time, and in the end, I only replied with a simple, okay. 5 years of marriage were easily dissolved by such simple words, like bubbles bursting into sunlight. On the balcony, the night breeze is a bit chilly. I light a cigarette and watch the lights of the building across the street. I suddenly remembered her favorite song. We cried, we laughed, we looked up at the sky. The stars are still shining, but now I can no longer see the stars. The city's neon lights obscure everything. Just like her betrayal obscured all the beautiful memories, plunging my heart into endless darkness. It's late at night, and I lie in bed, instinctively reaching for the bedside table. There used to be our wedding photo there, but now there's only a faint imprint, just like our love, which once left a deep mark but has now vanished without a trace. It turns out that the deepest hurt is not the betrayal itself, but having to pretend to live as if nothing happened after the betrayal. Every chance encounter, every document, every piece of news feels like a dull knife repeatedly cutting into my already shattered heart, causing me immense pain. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the hospital corridor was eerily quiet, the smell of disinfectant mingling with a harsh white light, creating a sense of oppression and suffocation. The 4 drips slowly dripped, one drop at a time, as if counting down to life. Son, don't stay here. Go back and rest. My mother's weak voice came from the hospital bed. She had lost a lot of weight compared to last week, and even speaking was a bit of a struggle, which made my heart ache. I held her hand tightly, afraid that if I let go, I would lose her. Mom, I'm not tired. You go to sleep. The phone vibrated. It was a message from Mary. I'm sorry. The company has been too busy these past few days. I might not be able to make it to the hospital. It has been 5 days since my mother was hospitalized, and she has only come once, and that was a hurried 10-minute visit. She used to buy all sorts of supplements for my mother and would accompany her to the park for walks every week. Those warm scenes now seem so ironic. Mary has been quite busy lately, her mother said softly. Don't blame her. Even at this moment, my mother was still making excuses for her. I didn't know what to say, so I could only silently tuck the corners of the blanket for her. My heart filled with helplessness and sadness. It was dawn, and I hurried back to the company to attend a video conference at 9 o'clock in the morning. On the screen, the client representative was explaining the new requirements, and I mechanically took notes, but my mind was filled with my mother's pale face and Mary's indifferent gaze. Mr. George, you look very tired. After the meeting, Justin said with concern, do you want to take a few days off? I shook my head. This job is my only support right now. If I let go of this, I'm afraid I will completely collapse and fall into endless despair. During the lunch break, I rushed to the hospital. The nurse was changing my mother's dressings, and seeing me, smiled and said, Annie is looking much better today. Son, the mother pointed to the bedside table. I brought you lunch. It's your favorite braised pork. My nose tinged with sadness. Even during my illness in the hospital, my mother still worried about my life. When I opened the lunchbox, a delicious aroma wafted out, made by the kind neighbor next door. Where's Mary? My mother asked softly. Is she not coming today? I was about to answer when the phone rang. It was Mary calling. George, I have to accompany a client this afternoon, so I might, ... I understand. I interrupted her. You go ahead and be busy. Hanging up the phone, I saw the disappointment in my mother's eyes. She wanted to say something, but suddenly she started coughing violently. I hurried to help her catch her breath, feeling a wave of sadness in my heart, both worried about my mother's illness and pained by Mary's indifference. At 6 o'clock in the evening, I stood by the hospital window. The sunset bathed the entire city in golden hues, making it feel particularly warm, yet my heart remained cold. At this time, Mary should have already finished work. Through the window, I saw her and Tom walk into the cafe across the street, chatting and laughing as if they had completely forgotten that there was a sick mother waiting for her care in the hospital. Yes, she is indeed very busy dating Tom with no time to attend to anything else. Mr. George, the nurse walked in. It's time to give Annie her injection. Then I returned to the bedside and watched my mother frown as she received the injection. She always said she wasn't afraid of pain, but her hand was tightly gripping the sheets. I knew she was enduring the pain just as I was enduring the pain in my heart. In the middle of the night, I was dozing lightly in the chair beside the hospital bed. In a haze, I heard my mother talking in her sleep. Mary, you must take good care of George. Tears flowed uncontrollably. How I wished this was all a nightmare, and that when I woke up, I could still see Mary busy in the kitchen, hear her laughing and chatting with her mother. But reality is so cruel that I cannot escape. The phone vibrated again. This time it was not Mary, but Tom. I heard Annie is in the hospital. Should I go see her? I stared at the message, suddenly feeling a wave of nausea. Was he showing pity, or was he flaunting his victory? I don't need it, I replied. Just take good care of Mary. The next morning, I hurried to give my mother a sponge bath and change the bedsheets before going to work. The nurse said I did it very professionally. like a trained caregiver. But who would have thought that I was originally someone with an important position in a tech company, now running around for family chores? At noon, I bought a rice ball at the convenience store downstairs from the office. I hadn't finished eating when the hospital called. "Mr. George, your mother's condition has fluctuated a bit, and we need you to come over as soon as possible." I dropped the rice ball and ran outside. In the elevator, I ran into Mary and Tom. They were getting ready to go to lunch. Seeing my disheveled state, Mary rarely showed a concerned expression. "Do you want me to go to the hospital with you?" "No need," I said with a forced smile. "You all continue your date." In the hospital room, my mother's condition has stabilized. The doctor said it was a mild angina attack, nothing serious. But I know this is just a temporary relief. The latest stage of cancer is still ruthlessly eroding her body, and each day could be a test of life and death. So I held my mother's hand. "It's all my fault for not being able to give you a complete home." My mother shook her head and said weakly, "Silly child, it's not your fault. Some things cannot be forced." It was late at night, and I stood on the hospital rooftop lighting a cigarette. The neon lights in the distance were still dazzling. The city was still bustling, but my world was gradually collapsing, sinking into an endless abyss of darkness. The most ironic thing is that at this moment, I actually feel somewhat grateful for Mary's departure. At least in my mother's final days, I no longer have to pretend to be happy, no longer have to weave lies, and can wholeheartedly accompany my mother. However, seeing the disappointment in my mother's eyes, my heart still aches faintly. This pain penetrates to the bone and cannot be eliminated. That morning, the sunlight was particularly bright, as if it were foreshadowing something. George pulled the curtains open. Mother's voice was soft, as if afraid to disturb something. "I want to see outside." I pushed open the window, and the spring breeze carrying the scent of flowers rushed into the hospital room. My mother hasn't been this clear-headed in a long time. She gazed out at the sycamore tree, her eyes shining with a long-lost brightness, as if in these final moments she had found a glimmer of peace and solace. "The sunshine is really nice today," she said. I held her hand and could feel her body heat slowly fading away. During this time, she had lost a lot of weight. Her wrists were as thin as a child's, which was heart-wrenching. "George," she suddenly said, "can you do one last favor for Mom?" My heart tightened. Suddenly, this was the first time she mentioned the word last in front of me. I knew that this moment had finally arrived. "Give Mary a call," she said, looking out the window. "I have something to tell her." I took out my phone and dialed that very familiar number. To my surprise, Mary actually answered and said she would be there soon. Half an hour later, she appeared at the door of the hospital room. Today, she wore no heavy makeup and was dressed in a simple white dress, resembling how she looked when we first met. But there was a hint of fatigue and guilt in her eyes. "Andy," her voice trembled slightly. "Come, sit here." Mother patted the edge of the bed. "Let me have a good look at you." Mary lowered her head, tears silently streaming down her face. Her mother gently wiped away her tears and said, "Silly child, why are you crying?" I stood by the window watching this scene, my heart filled with mixed emotions. I feel comforted by my mother's tolerance, yet saddened by my own experiences. "Mary," the mother's voice remained gentle. "All these years it was Annie who wronged you." Mary looked up sharply, her face full of confusion. "I love George so much," my mother continued, "so I always took it for granted that you should love him just as much. But feelings like that can't be forced, Aunt. There's no need to explain." Mary interrupted her. "You're still young and should pursue the happiness you desire. Just don't forget that there was someone who truly loved you." I turned away, unable to bear the tears in my mother's eyes, which contained too much reluctance and helplessness. "George," my mother suddenly called me. "Come here." I walked to the bedside, and she held my hand with all her strength. "Some loves, letting go is the liberation." This sentence was like a heavy hammer shattering my last bit of stubbornness. It turned out that my mother understood everything. She was just waiting for me to step out on my own and face this harsh reality. "Mom," my voice choked. "All right," she said with a satisfied smile. "I'm tired and want to take a nap." We quietly stood by the bedside, watching her slowly close her eyes. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm golden hue on her face, as if adding a touch of serenity to her departure. The sound of the ECG monitor suddenly became urgent, followed by a long beep. "Mom," I rushed to the bedside, but it was already too late. She left with a smile, as if she had simply fallen asleep, but my heart was filled with deep sorrow, unable to let go. Mary was sobbing uncontrollably beside me. I, however, remained unusually calm, arranging my mother's hair and covering her with a blanket, as if I were completing a solemn ritual. "Annie," Mary's voice was filled with deep remorse. I ignored her, just standing by the window watching the sycamore tree outside. The new buds on the tree were unfolding. Life continues to cycle endlessly, yet my life seemed to come to a standstill at this moment, losing its direction forward. The doctor and nurse rushed in, performing routine resuscitation. I knew it was all in vain. My mother was gone, taking with her her final stubbornness and tenderness, leaving me forever. After completing the formalities, it was already evening in the hospital corridor. The afterglow of the sunset casts long shadows, just like the sadness in my heart, endless and unrelenting. Mary was still there. She wanted to say something, but I raised my hand to stop her. "Go ahead," I said. "There's no need to come back again." "George, I'm really sorry," she said. "I'm sorry," I interrupted her. "You're right. Our marriage should have ended a long time ago." She stood frozen in place, seemingly not expecting me to say that. "But not because you fell in love with someone else," I continued, "but because you never truly loved me." Her tears streamed down her face. "It's not like that ... double quotes enough," I said wearily. "Mother is gone, and the last bond between us has been severed. Tomorrow, I will have the lawyer deliver the divorce agreement. You just need to sign it." After speaking, I turned and walked towards the morgue. Behind me came her heartbreaking cries, but they could no longer touch my heart. It had become numb and unfeeling after a series of blows. The mother's visage was very peaceful, as if she were asleep. I gently stroked her forehead and recalled what she often said in her lifetime. "In this world, those who can shield you from the wind and rain will eventually leave." "Mom," I whispered, "don't worry, I've let it go. It's late at night, and I sit alone on the hospital rooftop. I light a cigarette and watch the countless lights of the city. Once, I believed that love could conquer all. But now I understand that some things, once lost, are lost forever and can never be reclaimed. Just like the departure of my mother, just like the woman I once loved deeply. They will all become the deepest scars in my memory, forever etched in my heart. And I, at last, can let go of all my attachments and try to start a new life." Even though this process is filled with hardships and pain, the phone vibrated. It was a message from Tom. "My condolences. Do you need me to accompany Mary to see you off for the last time?" I didn't reply. I just silently deleted the number. Some people are not worth keeping in memory. They only bring me pain and hurt. On the third day after my mother's funeral, I began to pack my bags. The entire process was surprisingly calm, as if I were sorting through a stranger's belongings. Mary's clothes still hung in the wardrobe. Her skincare products were still on the vanity, and the air still carried the scent of her favorite perfume. But none of this mattered to me anymore. I was ready to completely say goodbye to the past and embrace a new life. In the living room storage cabinet, I found a long, dusty craft paper box. Inside were our wedding photos, wedding video, and all the group pictures from these years. The top one is a family portrait taken last year in my mother's house, with Mary leaning on my shoulder, smiling so brightly. But now that smile has become a kind of irony. It turns out she had already started collecting evidence. In the video folder, I found a surveillance recording from 3 months ago. In the footage, Mary and Tom are having dinner at an upscale restaurant. At that time, she told me she was working late, and I even specially ordered takeout to be delivered to her office. Looking back now, I realize how foolish and naive I was. There was more in the computer: her chat history with Tom, their date photos, and even the order for the engagement ring. It turned out that on the day he proposed divorce to me, Tom had everything prepared while I was still in the dark, immersed in my own delusion of happiness. I neatly placed all the evidence into a folder, planning to hand it to her when I signed. It wasn't to hurt her, but to let her know that my calmness is not weakness. I have already seen through it all and no longer hold any illusions. In the drawer of the study, I found a stack of old photos. They were from our college days. The silhouettes of us sitting side by side in the library. The scenes of her chasing me on the playground. The candid smiles captured in the cafeteria. Those youthful yet sincere times feel like stories from a past life, contrasting sharply with the pain of the present. Suddenly, a photo slipped out of the album. It was from our engagement ceremony, where my mother was putting a necklace on Mary. That necklace was my mother's dowry, passed down for 3 generations. At that time, my mother said, "Mary, from now on, you are my daughter." That made my heart suddenly ache. I remembered my mother's words before she passed away. Some loves, letting go, is the only relief. Yes, after being so attached for so long, it is time to let go, to free myself, and to release this already broken relationship. When I tidied up the master bedroom, I found a diary in the hidden compartment of the bedside table. It was in Mary's handwriting, and the earliest page was dated 3 years ago. I've been dreaming about Tom a lot lately. I know it's not right, but why does my heart still flutter? George is so good, yet the more this happens, the more I feel suffocated. Turning to the last page. It is dated from a month ago. Tom said he would take me to Paris to propose under the Eiffel Tower. This was my dream when I was 18. But do I really have to abandon everything I have now? George, I'm sorry that I closed the diary. But my heart was unusually calm. It turned out that the marriage I had been desperately protecting was, from the very beginning, a self-deceptive game. And I had been oblivious to it, foolishly giving my all. By the time I tidied up the closet, Mary's clothes were already more than half gone. The ones that remained were all bought together. At that time, she always said, "The ones my husband bought suit me the best." Looking back now, how much sincerity was there in that statement? In the innermost layer of the cabinet, I found a pink box. It contained the shells we bought in Hawaii during our honeymoon. She said she would cherish them forever, but they had long been forgotten in the corner, just like our vows. They ultimately could not withstand the erosion of time and the impact of reality. When the room was almost tidied up, Mary suddenly appeared at the door. She was wearing a black dress, which must have been specially chosen for this final farewell. "I'll help you clean up." Her voice was very soft. "No need." I continued to sort through the items in my hands. "I've organized your things. They're in the living room." She didn't move, just leaned against the doorframe and looked at me. "George, I'm really sorry for all these years." I stopped what I was doing and turned to face her. "Don't apologize. It makes me look pitiful." "Then I didn't mean that," she hurriedly explained. What is it?" I interrupted her. "Do you feel guilty? Or do you want to give yourself a perfect farewell? Mary, have you ever thought that every I'm sorry from you is a reminder of how ridiculous I once was?" She stood frozen in place, tears streaming down her cheeks. "These tears may contain guilt or perhaps regret, but for me, they no longer hold any meaning." "It's enough," I said wearily. "The divorce agreement can be signed tomorrow. You don't need to come anymore." "But there are no buts." I looked her in the eyes. "You are free now. Go live the life you want." She finally turned and left, the sound of her high heels echoing in the corridor. This time, I didn't chase after her to comfort her like before. Some paths must be walked alone, and I also need to face everything by myself and reclaim my life. It's late at night, and I sit alone in the emptied room. I light a cigarette and watch the smoke slowly dissipate into the air. I once thought this was the worst ending. Now I realize it may be the best beginning, the starting point of my new life. The phone rang. It was a message from the lawyer. The divorce agreement had been drafted. I looked at the words on the screen and suddenly felt a wave of relief. It turns out that true liberation is not about letting go, but about falling in love with myself again and rediscovering the independent and confident person I once was. The moonlight outside the window is bright, illuminating the empty room. I stand up and take one last look around this former home. On the sofa, on the coffee table, by the dining table, everywhere are our shared memories. But it's okay. The new house is ready, and I will start a new chapter of my life there. From today on, I will start a new life. I will no longer cry for those who do not love me, nor will I be heartbroken over false promises. This time, I choose to treat myself well and cherish my life and future. On the last day of the move, I ran into Mary in the elevator. She stood in the corner, her gaze evasive, nervously twisting the hem of her shirt. It was our first meeting since the divorce, and she seemed like she wanted to say something, but in the end, she just silently watched the numbers in the elevator flicker up one by one. The atmosphere was awkward and oppressive. I carried the last suitcase and walked out of the elevator without looking sideways. Behind me, I heard her hurried footsteps. "George, wait." I did not stop in my tracks. Over the past month, I have learned how to ignore her and no longer let her words and actions affect me. "George." Her voice was tinged with tears. "Can we talk?" I stopped in my tracks and looked at the woman I once loved. "What is there to talk about?" "Tommy, .. She bit her lip, hesitating to speak. "That it has nothing to do with me." I turned to leave. "That he wants to take me to Paris," she suddenly said. "Just next week." My hands trembled slightly. Parisette is the place she has always wanted to go. Over the years, I've been working hard to save money, hoping to surprise her on our 7th wedding anniversary by taking her to Paris to fulfill her dream. Now this dream will be realized by another man while I have become a mere bystander. "Congratulations," I said, continuing to walk forward, but she quickly caught up. "I always find it very strange. Every word he says is perfect, and everything he does is thoughtful. But ... double quotes, but what?" I stopped in my tracks. "Is it not what you imagined it to be?" She lowered her head. "He said yesterday that I should resign, saying women don't need to work so hard. But you have never..." "Mary," I interrupted her. "Are you regretting it now?" She suddenly looked up, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know. I suddenly missed my old life. I missed the coffee you used to make. I miss enough." I took a deep breath. "Let's go back. Tom is waiting for you." "Yes." I turned to leave. I heard her suppressed sobs. Once upon a time, such a sound could make my heart ache enough to drop everything. But now I only feel it's ironic. Regret has come too late. A week later, the neighbor called. "George, Mary has been coming to see me often lately, sitting alone for a long time. Yesterday, she even asked me about your recent situation." "Aunt," I said softly, "if she comes again in the future, just say you don't know." But the aunt sighed. "She looks very regretful." I hung up the phone and looked at the empty living room of my new home. The walls still hadn't had a chance to hang any pictures, and there were still unpacked boxes piled on the floor. But this simple life made me feel at ease, free from the turmoil and pain of the past. The phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. When I answered, it was a colleague from Mary's company. "Mr. George, Mary suddenly fainted during the meeting today." My heart tightened suddenly, but soon relaxed again. "What about her boyfriend?" "Mr. Tom is on a business trip," a colleague said awkwardly, "and Sister Mary said she doesn't want him to know." I was silent for a moment. "Take her to the hospital, and remember to tell Tom." Hanging up the phone, I lit a cigarette. In the swirling smoke, I recalled her last words. I don't want him to know. How familiar this scene is. She used to be like this, always thinking of me first when something happened. But now everything has changed. She no longer relies on me, and I am no longer the person who would risk everything for her. The next day, as I passed by the cafe we often went to, I saw her sitting alone in the corner through the glass window. There was a cup of American coffee on the table, but she was just staring blankly out the window. That was our usual spot. Every weekend morning, I would order her a cup of American coffee with 2 sugars. I didn't go in. I just walked past silently, but I still heard the waiter's voice. "Miss Mary, your coffee is going to get cold. Don't heat it," she said softly. "Let's just leave it like this." At that moment, I suddenly understood that she had finally tasted the flavor I once experienced. The cold coffee, like a cooled relationship, can never regain its original warmth. The sweetness and warmth of the past have now been replaced by bitterness and indifference. When I got home in the evening, I found a paper bag at the door. Opening it, I saw an old scarf and a note, found while sorting things out. Returning it to you. I recognized this as the scarf that my mother knitted by hand. There is a spot where she made a mistake in the stitching, but she stubbornly left it as it is, saying that this is what gives it warmth. Once upon a time, this scarf also warmed Mary's neck and witnessed our past. The phone rang again. It was a message from Tom. "I heard you were still concerned about Mary." I looked at the message and couldn't help but sneer. Deleting the text, I put the scarf deep into the closet. Some things are better left sealed in memory, no longer to be touched or recalled. I heard that Mary and Tom had a fight. This is the news that the assistant brought while submitting the project report. Without looking up, I signed the document. "It's not my concern," but Mr. George hesitated for a moment. "Miss Mary has been coming to the cafe downstairs every day recently." I stopped writing and looked out the window. Sure enough, she was sitting in that window seat again, her gaze drifting as she looked at the building. This was the 3rd time this week. Focus on work. I closed the document, signaling to my assistant that they could leave. Just after sending off the assistant, the neighbor called, "George, do you know that Mary and Tom have fallen out?" I responded briefly that day. "I saw them arguing in the supermarket." The aunt lowered her voice. "Tom said something about Mary quitting her job to stay home and take care of the family. And he even said she should cut off contact with her old friends." Mary started arguing with him. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice remained calm. "Aunt, this has nothing to do with us anymore." Hanging up the phone, I walked to the window. Mary's seat in the cafe downstairs was already empty. On the table remained a cup of untouched Americano, just like that day, as if it were telling the story of her desolation and loneliness. After work, I ran into Tom in the elevator again. He was impeccably dressed in a suit, but it couldn't hide the fatigue in his eyes. When he saw me, he forced a smile and said, "George, can we have a word?" I silently followed him to the smoking area. He took out a pack of cigarettes and elegantly handed it over. "Do you want one?" "No need," I politely declined his kindness. You know Mary's temper. He lit a cigarette. Stubborn, unmanageable. "I just want her to have a better life, but she never understands." "What is it that you don't understand?" I asked coldly. "Is it your desire for control that you don't understand, or is it yourself?" He was taken aback for a moment, then smiled. "Riley, you really do care about her, after all." "No." I looked him straight in the eye. "I only care about a person's basic respect. Mary may have many flaws, but she is not your possession." After saying that, I turned and left. His voice came from behind me. "She's been mentioning you a lot lately." I didn't look back and walked straight to the elevator. I have completely let go of the past and am no longer disturbed by their matters. I just want to focus on my own life. The next morning, the company receptionist called. "Mr. George, Mary is waiting for you in the lobby." I glanced at the time. It was only 7 o'clock in the morning. "Let her go back." But the receptionist hesitated. "Miss Mary said that if you don't see her, she will wait indefinitely." I sighed and walked towards the elevator. In the lobby, Mary's haggard face bore no trace of makeup. Upon seeing me, she stood up but didn't know what to say. "Something wrong?" I asked. She bit her lip. "I'm here to apologize." I frowned. "There's no need for that." "No, I must say," her voice trembled slightly, "it is only during this time that I have come to understand how tolerant you were of me back then. I thought Tom could give me the life I wanted, but I realized it was just my one-sided wish." "Mary," I interrupted her, "you don't need to compare me to him." I know tears slid down her face. "I just wanted to tell you that I finally understand what true love is. But it's already too late, isn't it?" I looked at the woman I once loved deeply, but my heart was unusually calm. "Let the past be the past. George," she suddenly looked up. If we could do it all over again." "There won't be an if." I took a step back because I'm no longer the person I used to be. As I turned around, I heard her suppressed sobs. Once upon a time, such cries could break my heart. But now all I want is to leave as soon as possible, no longer bound by the emotions of the past. Back in the office, I found a message from the neighbor. "Aunt George, do you remember when you got married?" Mary said what touched her the most was your gentleness. Looking back now, that gentleness might be the happiness she has been searching for all along. I gazed out at the morning light and suddenly understood that some people are destined to be their arrival is merely to teach us to grow and to make us stronger. When I got home in the evening, I found a paper bag at the door again. Opening it, I saw a stack of photos, all memories of our years together. The top photo was from our wedding day. In the picture, I gently wiped away the tears from the corner of her eye. At that time, we all thought this was happiness. Now we understand that happiness has never been a perfect longing, but rather the mutual understanding and tolerance found in ordinary life. I put the photo in the deepest part of the drawer. Some memories don't need to be erased, but they also don't need to be revisited often. Just like certain people, they don't need to be forgotten, but it's time to let go and move forward to pursue a new life. The rain in late autumn drizzled all day long. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new company, watching the crowd below hurry by. 3 months ago, I resigned from my previous job and started a new life. The new environment and new colleagues gave me a fresh start. "Mr. George, your coffee," the new assistant said softly. I picked up the coffee, and the aroma wafted through the air. This is a newly opened cafe, and the taste is completely different from the one I used to frequent. But this unfamiliar flavor actually makes me feel at ease, free from the entanglements of past memories. Mr. George Barry is downstairs and says she wants to see you. I glanced at the rain outside the window and said, "Let her go back." But the receptionist hesitated for a moment. She has been standing in the rain for almost an hour. I walked to the window and indeed saw her solitary figure. She wasn't holding an umbrella, and her black trench coat was soaked with rain, looking exceptionally disheveled. "Tell her I'm busy." I turned and walked towards the conference room. During the meeting, the assistant rushed in. "Mr. George, Miss Mary has fainted." My hand paused for a moment but quickly regained its calm. "Did you call an ambulance?" "Already called," the assistant said. "Do you want to continue the meeting?" I interrupted him, my gaze returning to the projection screen. I had already decided not to let her matters affect me anymore, focusing on my own career and life. After the meeting, the neighbor called, "George, do you know Tom is getting married? And his fiancée is the daughter of their company?" Mary went crazy when she heard the news. I said softly, "Don't tell me these things anymore. Everyone must take responsibility for their own choices," I said, looking out at the rain that was gradually stopping. "This is the path she chose for herself." After hanging up the phone, the mobile rang again. "May I speak to Mr. George?" The patient says, "You are her emergency contact." I just remembered that the initial contact person has never changed. "How is she?" "Low-grade fever and severe fatigue require hospitalization for observation. However, the patient has been uncooperative." I sighed. "Let her rest, but she has been crying, saying she wants to see you." I was silent for a moment. "Tell her for me. Some paths once missed are just missed." As night fell, I packed my things and prepared to leave work. Passing by the cafe downstairs, I saw Tom sitting inside. He waved at me to get my attention. I hesitated for a moment but still walked in. "About the engagement, you should have heard, right?" He got straight to the point. I nodded. "Congratulations. I've actually been very curious." He picked up his coffee. "Why didn't you try to keep her?" I looked out at the night. To love someone is not to possess them but to bless them in finding true happiness. But now she is in great pain. That was her choice. I stood up. "Just like you, now you are also making a choice." Leaving the cafe, I received a text from an unknown number. "George, I'm waiting for you at the hospital entrance. I know you pass by here at this time every day." I glanced in the direction of the hospital and turned to walk towards the subway station. Some waits are in vain, just like some feelings. Once let go, they should not be revisited. I must move forward with determination. Back home, I opened the mailbox and found an email from Mary. "George, do you remember our first date? You took me to see the stars and said you would pick the brightest one for me. I laughed at you for being childish, but now I realize that such a simple promise is the most precious. I'm sorry for disappointing you. I'm also sorry for letting all the beauty down. Now I finally understand the true meaning of love, but it's too late, isn't it? I wish you happiness." I turned off the email and walked to the balcony. The night sky was dotted with stars, but I remembered my mother's words. Some love, letting go, is the only liberation. Yes, letting go is not giving up, but choosing a better life. The phone rang again. It was the neighbor. "Aunt George, have you considered forgiving her?" My voice was very calm. Some wounds once healed should not be touched again. Putting down the phone, I stared blankly at the night sky. I once thought that loving someone meant tolerating any mistakes they made. Now I understand that true love is about giving each other a dignified ending, no longer entangled in the rights and wrongs of the past. The night is deepening, and the city's noise gradually subsides. I close the balcony door, letting the wind and rain rage outside. Some people can ultimately only remain in memories, and I have finally learned how to live well and embrace a new future. A year later, In winter, I returned to that neighborhood again. The neighbor aunt said that my mother's tombstone needed renovation, so I took the opportunity to come back and take a look over the weekend. Unexpectedly, I ran into Mary, who was just about to go out at the entrance of the community. She had lost a lot of weight since the last time we met, and her gaze no longer avoided mine. When she saw me, she was taken aback for a moment, then immediately showed a calm smile. "Long time no see." "Long time no see," I nodded. Over the past year, I have heard some news about her intermittently through the neighbor aunt. Tom's wedding took place as scheduled. She didn't cause a scene, just quietly moved away from the city. 6 months later, she returned, working in a new company and living alone. "Do you want to come in and sit for a while?" she asked. I made some coffee. I shook my head. "No, I came to see my mother's tombstone." I know her voice was soft. The neighbor lady told me, "Do you want me to go with you?" "No need." I turned to leave. "George," she suddenly called out to me. "Do you remember the question I asked you that day? If we could do it all over again?" "Mary," I interrupted her. "Some things can't be changed just by starting over." A trace of sadness flashed in her eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. "I understand now. This year, I've come to understand many things." "That's great. Do you know?" She gazed into the distance. "I often think of what my mother said at the end. She said, 'Don't forget that someone once loved you.' I sincerely, at that time, didn't understand. But now I realize she was reminding me that the most precious thing about love is not the grand gestures but the steady flow." I listened in silence. Unfortunately, I understood too late. She said with a bitter smile, "By the time I truly understood what love is, I had already lost the most precious thing." The sky began to drift, small snowflakes landing on her eyelashes in a daze. I recalled our first meeting. It was also snowing that day. She stood at the library entrance, her eyelashes covered in snowflakes, smiling like a child. The sound of her hurried breathing came from behind me. Perhaps she was hoping to see my pain, or she needed my anger to alleviate her own guilt. But I would not give her any of that. "George," she looked at me seriously, "have you really let it go?" I nodded. "Just as you said, some truths are understood too late, but at least we both understand now." The sound of a car horn came from afar. She glanced at the time and said, "I have to go. I have an appointment with a client. Take care." I turned and walked towards the cemetery. "George," her voice came from behind. "Thank you for once loving me so much." I didn't look back, just waved my hand. The snow fell heavier and heavier, gradually blurring our figures. In front of my mother's grave, I stood quietly for a long time. I remembered what she often said in her lifetime. Love is not possession but a blessing. Now I finally understand that some people are destined to be passersby in our lives. They have come, hurt our hearts, but they also taught us to grow, making us more mature and strong. In the evening, the neighbor aunt invited me to her house for dinner. She chattered on about Mary Chang. Over the past year, that child has become much more sensible. She always comes to keep me company and talk. A few days ago, she even said that if she could do it all over again, she would definitely cherish you more. I sipped the soup from the bowl, smiling without saying a word. "George," the neighbor Anne asked tentatively, "are you really not considering?" I put down my chopsticks. "Some people, once missed, are just missed." She sighed. "That's true. You all have grown up." Leaving Annie's house next door, I walked slowly along the familiar path. On this road, there were once our figures walking hand in hand. Moments filled with laughter and joy, as well as arguments and tears. Looking back now, those were all essential parts of growing up. The phone rang. It was an email from the company. "Next month, I will be going abroad to open a branch office. A new life, a new beginning." This year, I learned a lot. I learned to let go, to forgive, and to continue loving. The word love is too heavy. We have all treated it as a cage, trapping ourselves and trapping each other. Now I understand that true love is to still bless after letting go and to still believe after the pain. When I got home, I opened my computer and deleted all the old photos. Some memories don't need to be cherished forever, just like some people. You don't have to love them forever. The snow outside is still falling, covering the entire city. I stand on the balcony, light a cigarette, and watch the lights of thousands of homes. I once thought that loving someone meant never letting go. Now I realize that sometimes loving someone is precisely about knowing when to let go. This city is so vast that it can accommodate all encounters and farewells. And we at last found our own exit in the cage of love, stepping into a new journey of life.